Hello and welcome to my garage. My name is Ken and today we're going to be testing and tuning a 800 e-tec 2015. And we're going to start with just running it fully standard sled and see what horsepower it will put out. And then we're going to start like changing the airbox for a Bondi airbox and see what kind of gains we get and if we need extra fuel and all that. We have a Dyno jet power commander to take care of the fuel, and we'll see if we're gonna need it in the beginning or if we're gonna need it later on. After that we're gonna run the V-force and see what gains we get with that and if we need extra fuel or whatever. And then we're gonna test the Y-pipe from D&D. We have been using this one on a race sled and it worked fine on that one, but we'll see if it works with the standard e-tec 800 and if what happens when we put it on and all that. And after we're done that, we're gonna been using the straight line performance head. It's a billet head and it's made for 0 to 6,000 feet. So we're quite low here, so we cannot run any high compression heads on standard 98 fuel. But we'll see if it works. It looks really fine, but we'll see how it works. Other to that, we're gonna put on some extra ignition, sometimes in the middle, I think, maybe after the airbox, and we put the ignition on and maybe 2 degrees, and then we put it off 2 degrees again and test something else and put it on and off and on and off and see if we get gains from higher ignition and if we don't, like with the head, if it starts to get in trouble with the higher ignition or what happens. After we're done all of this, we're gonna remove the cylinder, we're gonna pour it and put it back and see if we can get some serious HP gains. Well, that's about it. I hope you enjoy it. The one thing I want to show you is that I'm using the AFR to keep track of the fuel. So now when we run it standard, we can see what the AFR value is. And then when we put on the tuning parts, we can see if we're getting rich or lean or something like that. And we can see so we don't break an engine. So now we're just gonna warm up the sled. And then we're going to run the first standard pull. Run the first fully standard e-tec 800. So, that was the first pull on the e-tec 800 and we're going to see what horsepower we got. So we can see here we got 149.6 horsepower on 7,900 RPMs. So I don't really like this with the bolts inside here that can, if one turns loose, or it can go straight into the engine. So I'm gonna replace these ones to some plastic things instead, so it won't damage my engine if something happens, if this goes loose. This is where you should put the intake temperature sensor. Now I have mounted the air temperature sensor, and I mounted it so with only plastic things, and the only thing they can do is fall out and not into the engine like this one could. It's not good at all. Then you've broken your engine totally. So no iron things inside an intake area. Good. Now we have mounted the Bondi airbox, and we're going to run the second pull with Bondi airbox only and see what happens. So, we had some technical issues. We lost battery in our camera, so we're gonna look what the Bondi box gave. And if you see here, we can see that the peak RPM was lowered to 7,800 RPMs. It's 100 less than with the standard. And that the air-fuel ratio, the AFR, is higher. So I want to put some extra fuel on it. But it still gave horsepowers. We can see here on the graph that. So we can see here that it gave 153 horsepowers on 7,800 RPM. But you can see here that we have some issues here. Probably the stock ignition is lowering is retarding the timing. So that's why the peak is lower. And the exhaust temperature probably went too high because of lean fuel. So we're gonna put on some extra fuel and run it again. Now we've been putting on the extra fuel box and the Bondi box. That's the only thing that is there. So we're gonna run it now and see if we gain any more horsepower. first thing I can see now that the intake temperature was a bit lower this time. It was 26 degrees, so I need to change that because the dyno will show the wrong numbers if I don't. And I just can take a quick look that these numbers are right. And we have a little bit lower noise, so I have to change that too. To 38%. Well, that's about right. And we'll see. We can first look at what gains, or if we had any gains of putting on some extra fuel. So now we can see that the RPM is now 7,900 as it was standard, and you can see on the torque and on the horsepower line that we don't have that retarded ignition, that the curve just went flat. So now it gave 155 horsepower, 155.3. So that's really good for an airbox. That's around 5 horsepower gain with the fuel controller. Without the fuel controller, only 3.4 horsepower and a little bit lean, so you can probably, if you're unlucky, knock your engine and ruin some pistons. So, the last run we ran at 2% of fuel extra, and I thought that it's still running a bit lean, so I put on 2% more. So we have a 4% total of fuel now, and we're going to run with the Bondi box and the fuel commander with 4% extra fuel. And we'll see what happens. First and see what kind of power we got. I think it was a little bit less than last time, but the AFR is probably a lot better this time. Went 154.5, so it's almost 1 horsepower less than last time, but we're gonna see what the AFR says. Now the AFR is a lot better. It's on 13.3, so we're quite close to the original 13, and the original was up on 13.3 also, so now we're fine. Now it's good. It's no risk for damaging any pistons or anything like that. So now we have put on more ignition, 1.5 degrees. And we're running with the Bondi airbox, the power commander with 4% extra fuel, and 1.5 degrees ignition. And we're going to see what happens. So we can see now we gained almost 2 horsepower. It went 156.7 on 7,800 RPM. The RPM probably went down because of more advanced ignition. So you often do that. Now we have advanced the timing with 0.5 degrees more than last time, just to see what happens, if we gain any horsepower or if we reach the best point of having your ignition. So we're going to see what happens, and it's 2 degrees more than original now, and we'll see what happens. I think we made a step backwards. The engine was not gaining any power, what I could see. Almost the opposite way, it was going for less horsepower, but we're gonna see here what the graph says. Oh, it went exactly the same as last time, 156.7. So it's no point of going any further with the ignition as it is now. We're gonna take it back to 1.5 degrees when we do the next pull, because it's unnecessary to have higher ignition than you have to. Now we run out of time, so we just have to call it a day. We have to go back to our children and wives. They're not so into this as I am. So, but to just give it a closure, we gained 7 horsepower today, and that's really good for just an airbox and some fueling and ignition. So next time we're gonna try the V-Force, and we're gonna try the Y-pipe from D&D and see if we can gain any more horsepowers. But see you later and have a nice evening.